Oh,
I love it. Wonderful. We're
perfect.
both in workout attire, like we just got done running.
Well, I didn't, but I like to look like I just did for sure.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so I'm going to just leave a few notes for Lissa. Hi, Lissa. This is Jana. I'm here with Bret Lockett, and we are getting ready to record our episode for Oh My Health, There Is Hope. And I am just going to count down and read him in, and then he's going to share his story. All right, so 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to Oh My Health, There Is Hope. I'm your host, Jana Short, and today I am so excited to introduce you to Bret Lockett. Bret is a leading business consultant and executive coach, entrepreneur, speaker, and former NFL player. Bret has been featured in media across the globe, including Forbes, CNN, Entrepreneur Magazine, NBC, and the Huffington Post, amongst several others. As an entrepreneur, Bret has been an investor and a member of the executive team for several companies, including his partnership with the private aviation company M2 Jets, a fully serviced jet charter and sales company, and Newport Ventures, a business consulting firm where he leads business initiatives to help companies tackle their most critical challenges. Here's my favorite part about Bret, though. Bret's passion for helping children and animals has led his deep involvement in philanthropy, specifically with the organization People for Ethical Treatment of Animals, PETA. Everyone knows PETA, as well as others. Bret, thank you so much for being with us today.
Jana, thank you, and thank you for that introduction. Out of everything that you said, that is the most favorite part of what I've done is been able to work with kids and animals. I absolutely believe kids are our future, and who doesn't love a beautiful puppy and everything else out there, right?
You know, my husband's a veterinarian.
I know, and so I'm sure he sees it all, the good and
He loves animals more than he loves people.
there's a lot of people like that. I have a few friends who are like, I'd rather hang out with my dogs than hang out with people.
He's trying to figure out a process where the animals can come see him without the parents bringing.
Well, with COVID, that process may be a little closer than he knows.
They have drive-up service right now.
Stay in the car, just bring the puppy.
Exactly. So I want you to share your story of hope with us. Our listeners are so inspired by all the incredible stories of hope, and I know yours is spectacular.
Well, I love telling my story, not because I love talking about myself, but because of all of the things that I had to go through to get to where I'm at today. And the great part about, I think, all humanity is everybody has their own story, and it's up to you how you want to write that. And so, I'm from Southern California. I grew up here. Ever since I was 4 years old, I was in sports. So you name it: basketball, football, baseball, all year round. And I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to UCLA. And I remember when I first got an offer, my first offer was Arizona University, and I didn't even know how good I was as an athlete. My coach at the time, I was a junior in high school, and my coach at the time told me, hey, I think you're pretty good. Good luck on at this camp that I was going to. It was at San Diego State down in San Diego, and at this time, this was where all the coaches could be at the camp because all the NCAA regulations now. Coaches can't talk to players; they can't be there physically. But this was 2005, right? And so things were much different then. And so, we had guys like Pete Carroll who were at the camp. He's the Seahawks head coach. He was the great USC head coach as well. And so I'm there, and I did the camp. I gave my best, and a week later, I ended up getting a scholarship from Arizona University, and that was my first real opportunity of, or real just acknowledgement of understanding how good I was as a football player, because nobody really, I knew I was better than most of the people around me, but that was just in my area. I didn't realize how good I was. And so from there, I got another offer from Boise State and then Utah and then eventually UCLA. And I chose UCLA because of obviously, it's one of the top schools in the world, but just a great football program. And so I was at UCLA for 4 years, played all 4 years, and we're in my last game as my senior year, last game of playing football, and the next step is either you decide to go to the NFL or you just hang it up. And every kid's dream, every football player's dream is to make it to the big leagues, make it to the NFL, and so that was what I was pushing to. That's what I was pursuing, and so it's my we're in the second quarter of my senior year. We're playing USC out of all teams. It's the biggest rival game of, if anybody's watching this and you guys know anything about sports, USC and UCLA is one of the oldest rivalries here in Los Angeles, and one of the biggest rivalries in the nation. And so it's the second quarter, and I run up, and I go to tackle a running back. And when I tackle him, I dive at him, and my forearm hits his shin. And I hear kind of a crack. And I was like, oh, that doesn't feel good, and it doesn't sound good either. And so I ran back to the next, to the huddle, and then I went to the next play, but I couldn't run without holding my arm, because every time I let go of my arm, it felt like something was falling inside of my arm. And so the next play, I ran off on the sideline, and the trainers took me in the locker room, and they said, Bret, you broke your arm. You're done. You're done. The game's over. You can't play anymore. And I said, you can't wrap it up. You can't put a splint in it. They said, no, game over. And so I was extremely upset, but I knew I still had an opportunity to go to the NFL. And so a week later, I had surgery. I had a plate with 6 screws put into my left radius, which is your arm, left forearm. It's still there. And just so you know, when I go through the airport, it doesn't go off, so I'm good. But after that, I went to Tennessee, and I went to Tennessee to train, Nashville, Tennessee, to be exact. And usually, what happens is after you play your last game in college, you then go train for what they call the combine. The combine is the top 300 players in the nation that the NFL scouts invite to Indianapolis to perform and show their talents. And this is a whole week of grueling interviews and training sessions, and you're running your 40-yard dash, you're bench pressing 225 pounds as many times as you can. It's you essentially putting your all on the line, and you showing your abilities to all the NFL scouts. And so I was training for that, but I didn't get invited to that, right? It's only the top 300 players in the nation. And so each college has a pro day. And what that pro day is, it's a mini combine to where the NFL scouts come to your college, and then they let the guys who didn't go to the combine perform there. And so I was preparing for that at UCLA. And so I show up in Tennessee, Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm in a cast, perfect L shape. It was aerodynamic. It was great for running, but I couldn't lift weights. And I was so frustrated that I couldn't do what everybody else was doing. Everybody was lifting weights, and everybody was, running and jumping and all this great stuff. And I had to sit the lifts out. I could only lift with my right arm. But the thing that I knew, and the thing that my college coach always used to tell me was, Bret, focus on what you can control. And that's exactly what I did. So I focused on how hard I worked, which is literally lifting with my right hand because I couldn't lift with my left hand, and then focusing on running because that was the only thing that I could control. And then the last thing I could control was how I showed up every single day, what kind of attitude I had, whether it was positive or was it going to be negative. And I knew that I had to bring, positivity to what it was that I was doing. And so I was there for 6 weeks, come back to LA and it's pro day. And I get my cast taken off 2 weeks before pro day. And so I bench pressed 2 weeks before, and it was feeling good. And so I go into pro day and I crush it. I run one of the fastest 40 times in that class that year. I ran a 4.45 second 40, which if you know anything about football, it's pretty fast. I was 211 pounds. I was ripped. I looked like I was in that movie 300. And so my agent said, hey, you have a great chance of getting drafted. So the way the NFL works is there's 7 rounds of draft. So when you hear the NFL draft, anybody who's listening to this abroad, the NFL drafts players every single year, and each team gets 7 picks. So it's 32 teams, and each team gets 7 picks, first round all the way to 7th round, right? And so my agent said, hey, Bret, you have a great chance of getting drafted, probably late 7th round. And if you don't get drafted, what teams do is they'll call you and say, hey, we think you're good enough. We want to sign you, and we're going to bring you in. And so you have an opportunity to make the team even though you didn't get drafted. And so I'm thinking that's how I'm going to get in. And so my parents throw me this big draft party at our home. And, we have friends and family come over. And I knew the first day I wasn't going to get drafted. The first day is only first round. So the top, 30 players or so, 32 players are going to go that day. right? And then the second day is all second round to fourth round, and then the third day is all fifth round to the seventh round. So I knew that it was going to be the last day. And so on the last day, I'm sitting there, we're all sitting in front of the TV, and I'm hearing all these guys' names get called, and I'm like, I've never even heard of this guy, getting called from schools out of the Midwest I've never heard of, and I'm like, why am I not getting called? And so the last pick of the draft every single year is called Mr. Irrelevant. It's kind of like a joke, but he gets this parade and he gets this huge kind of publicity surrounded around being picked last. It's kind of like it's a good thing if it pays off, but if it doesn't, then you're just last. But I'm like, that would be crazy if I got Mr. Irrelevant. And so last pick of the draft comes up, and that's not my name. And so I walk outside to blow off some steam. I'm upset about it. And about 10 minutes of walking, my agent calls me, and his name's Barty, and I go, hey B, what's up? And he says, hey, the Green Bay Packers called, and they said they want to invite you for a tryout. And so a tryout is kind of like the hardest way of making it into the NFL. It's like, hey, we think you have some talent, but we really haven't seen anything from you, so we're going to give you this tryout, and if we like you, we'll sign you. And so I said, hey, Barty, send me wherever. I don't care. I'm ready to go. And I was furious at this time. I knew the work that I put in. I knew my ability, and so I was upset. And so, I hang up. I'm walking back to my house, and he calls me back like 5 minutes later, and he says, hey, the Green Bay Packers drafted a safety, and what that means is they paid for someone in the fifth round. So they drafted somebody. They paid him a signing bonus, and so he has a better chance of making that team. And so he says, we're going to send you to the Cleveland Browns because you have a better chance of making that team. They didn't draft anybody in your position. I played strong safety. So they said, they didn't draft anybody in your position. So we're going to send you to the Cleveland Browns instead. I said, wherever, let me know, let's do it. And so that was a Sunday. On Thursday, I'm flying out to Cleveland. Don't even know where Cleveland's at. I fly out to Cleveland. We land in Cleveland Airport. The training facility is in Berea, Ohio. So if anybody's from Ohio that's listening to this, they know exactly where this is. It's about 20 minutes from Cleveland. And so we get there. It's about, it's me and probably 8 other guys at the airport. We all hop in a van. We go to the hotel. We drop all of our stuff off, and then we go to the practice facility. And so we get there, and the head coach welcomes the entire team. There's probably about 75 guys there. And this is all the draft picks. So all the 7 guys that were drafted, the top guys, the guys that went to USC, they got these huge deals, and everybody's like, in awe. But it's all rookies. Okay, it's all rookies. We're all the same age, and there's people who've been signed, and there's a bunch of people who haven't been signed. And so he welcomes us, and then we break up into independent meetings, and I go into defense because that's what I play. And they give us a playbook about this thing. They say, hey, we're going to run about 60% of this. We want you to know this tomorrow when it's time to go. And so I go back to the hotel, and I stayed up till 2:30 that night until I didn't know just my position, but I knew every single person's position and what they did on every single play on that field, because I knew how preparation was the biggest key to results and then ultimately success. And so the next day I line up, we go into meetings again, defensive meetings, and the coach at the time, Rob Ryan, who's a big coach, he asked, hey, can anybody come up on the board and draw up this play? This play's called Falcon. It's if anybody knows football, it's a blitz against empty. And so nobody raises their hand, and I raise my hand, and I say, and I'm like, hey, I can do it. And he says, okay, UCLA, come on up. He didn't even know my name at the time, okay, because we all had we had tags with our school written on us. And so he says, all right, UCLA, come on up. And so I go up, and I draw the formation, and then I draw every single person's position, and then I draw exactly who they have and what they do. And he goes, okay, that's not bad, UCLA, sit back down. And so next we have practice. So then I go out to practice, and I'm the kind of guy that I only know 150%. I don't know, 0. I don't know 50%. If it's either go or I'm not doing it at all, right? And so I get on the field. It didn't matter where guys were drafted. I line up right in the front. Didn't matter, what accolades they had. I was at the front of the line, and I was flying around. Okay, we lined up for defense. I'm telling the linebacker to tell the lineman what to do because the linebacker didn't study, and he doesn't know what to do with the lineman. And so they say, all right, this guy's clearly fast. This guy's big. He's smart. I made that part up. I think I'm smarter than the average guy. But they said he's fast. He's physical. He knows the game. We like him. And so we get to the last day, which is Sunday, we've already had 3 practices in 2 days. Okay. So 3 practices, and they tell us on Sunday, we have a conditioning test. No, they didn't tell us this Saturday. They tell us on Sunday, hey, we have a conditioning test, and you're going to run 20 sprints. You got 30 seconds in between. I had to run 20 60-yard dashes, 30 seconds in between each one, and I had to make it in about 7 seconds. And I said to myself that I will die on this football field before I let any single person beat me in one of these sprints, because this is how bad I feel like I deserve to be in the NFL. And so each time I lined up, I get set and I take off. And I'd be at the front of the pack. And it wasn't just the front of the pack. I made sure I beat every single person I was running against by 5 yards. And I would turn around as soon as I crossed the 60-yard mark. I'd turn right back around and I'd line back up. And I knew that every single sprint that I ran was almost like a year of my life. It reminded me of the work and the effort that I put in when I was, at UCLA with the grueling 6 a.m. workouts. We'd get on the field and all you could see was fog, and I had to get the team ready to go. I had to get myself ready to go. It reminded me of the times where my dad would get off work and my mother would get off work to take me to football practice. And even though I'd show up late, I'd get there because I knew how important it was to live my dream. And so every single step I ran, it was to be in the NFL and live my dream. And so I'm running, and at the end of these 20 sprints, I did not lose one of those sprints. And I made sure that I beat every single person. And so when we finished, Eric Mangini, who was the head coach at the time, brought everybody up. And usually what happens at this point is, they invite you up to the coach's offices, and they say, hey, we're going to sign you. Hey, we're stay working out. We're going to keep our eye on you, or hey, we're going to let you go sometimes. And so the coach, Eric Mangini, brings us up and he says, hey, I appreciate everybody for their hard work, the dedication, the attitude that you brought to the game this weekend. I know this was some of your biggest moments of your life that you'll ever have. And I want to let everybody know right now we're going to sign Bret Lockett. And my mouth just kind of dropped and people just started clapping. And that is how I got into the NFL. And so fast forward, I go back home to LA, come back out to Cleveland. I go through training camp. It's 4 games before the season starts. And after the third game, in the third game, I'm running down on kickoff, first play of the game, and I hit this fullback who's 245 pounds, and I hit him, and it feels like 2 Mack trucks take my shoulders and slam them together. And I spend the night in the hospital with a chest contusion. And then 4 days later, I play against the Chicago Bears. And the reason I played was because I knew that if I didn't play, I would have got cut. And so I took this painkiller called Toradol, which is they take a needle and they shoot you in the behind, and you can't feel anything. And I run up first play of the game and I feel everything. And I played that game knowing that my life was on the line. If I didn't go through that game, I probably would have got cut. And so the next day they started cutting people. It's a Friday. Saturday they bring me in, and I'm like, I hope I don't get cut. And they say, Bret, we want to put you on the practice squad. And what a practice squad is there's 8 guys that each NFL team can keep on their roster, and they can bring them up to play on the regular roster. But while they're on practice squad, they only practice with the team. So they don't travel, they don't dress up or anything. They just practice. And so I'm like, it's better than nothing. And so I was a little upset, but I still had an opportunity. And so the next day I go in, and they physically have to cut you from the team and then re-sign you back to the team. And so when I went into the general manager's office, I'm sitting outside of his office, and my agent calls me, and I'm like, hey, Barty, what's up? I'm sitting in front of the GM's office. And he says, the Patriots just picked you up off a practice squad going to New England. And I'm like, what? He says, you're going to New England. And I said, well, hold on. The GM's calling me, and I'll call you right back. And so I go in. General manager is like, hey, bro, I don't know if you heard, you just got picked up by the Patriots. And I said, my agent just told me. He says, we wish you the best of luck. I've been living out of the Radisson for the last 2 months. I run there. It's 4:30. I run there, throw everything in a suitcase. I'm on a plane to Boston at 7 o'clock. Patriots pick me up that night, put me in a hotel. They say, hey, be ready at 6:30. I'm ready at 5:30. And they pick me up. They take me to the stadium, Gillette Stadium. I don't know if you know Gillette Razors, but Gillette Stadium, it's where the Patriots play. And I walk into the facility, and the first person I meet is Bill Belichick. And he says, Bret, great to meet you. We saw a lot of great things on film. I said, Coach, it's great to be here. I'm honored. He says, well, we're expecting a lot of great things out of you. And that's how I got into the NFL. And so, like I said, I don't like telling that story just to tell that story, but there's times in everybody's life where we have to decide what kind of life we want to live. And each of us have opportunities in our life. And there's only a few of those big opportunities. And that's why I create the high stakes training, because there's high stakes in all of our lives where things culminate to where there's these big opportunities that can completely change our life for the better. And it's up to you how you want to prepare for that. It's up to you to figure out how you want to live your best life. And so I appreciate this platform, Jana. I love everything that you do. And it's just an honor to be able to tell my story to all of your listeners.
Oh my gosh, that was amazing. You know what I love the most is that you just kept rewriting your story. You didn't let an injury write it for you. You didn't let not getting picked in the 7th inning of the draft write it for you. You're like, nope, that's not for me. And you just kept moving forward, which I love. I always tell people, don't let somebody write something so important. You figure that out. You write that.
You're absolutely right. And, you know, for me, I was bullied and I didn't talk about this, but I was bullied when I was a kid. I started getting bullied in the 6th grade, and I was bullied all the way until college. And most people don't know that. And, you know, sometimes, you know, we have these things that are either holding us back or are pushing us forward. And everything that happened that was negative in my life, I would take that and I would utilize the football field to create my success. And everybody's successful, or everybody's great at one thing. It doesn't matter what it is. There's something out there that you're better than everybody else in. And so for your listeners, I challenge them to explore that. I challenge them to lean into what makes them great and utilize that to get them to where it is that they want to be. And if I didn't follow, you know, the football, if I didn't make it into the NFL, I can tell you right now, my life would be great, but it wouldn't be what it is today.
So we both love helping children, and there's a lot of youth. I have 5 grandsons, and they are all talking about being in their favorite sport, right? But what would be the things that you would tell them? Because there should be, you're probably not going to die doing your sport, right? And I always tell them to think of your exit plan when you're going into whatever you love. There's always that exit plan, which, by the way, after you answer that, we're going to go into your exit plan, because you took all of those skills that you acquired through that and created magic with it. But what would you tell the youth of today that they want to be on the basketball team, they want to be on the football team, the baseball team, whatever their passion is? I tell my grandkids, do it. Why not do it? Why not you? It's got to be someone, but have an exit plan, because what if that injury had been something that really did have to take you out?
Absolutely. I always tell I was telling a young kid the other day that your mind is the greatest tool that you can ever have. It's not about your sport. It's not about anything else in life, because if you can control your mind, you can control your reality. And so for kids or anybody else out there who needs a backup plan or needs to make sure that they're living their best version of themselves, it's every day pouring into your mind and pouring into your spirit. Because if you do those 2 things every single day, you will take exponential jumps in your life to be able to hit a goal much faster than most people. And most people, what they do is they don't move exponentially. They take 4 or 5 steps and then they stop, or they take a few steps back and then they have to pretty much start all over again. And exponential means that we don't stop. We just keep gradually increasing where it is that we're going. So being able to control your mind and focusing on how you can control your mind is probably the biggest skill set that anybody can learn. It doesn't matter whether you're an entrepreneur or an athlete.
100%. I'm a mindset coach. I'm a 100% on that. But you took all those skills and you created, like, I want to talk about your entrepreneurship. Like, you are phenomenal, but you use that. I'm there at 5:30 if they're there at 6:30. I'm there at 7:30 if they leave at 5:30, and I'm doing better because that's who I am, and nothing else is going to settle. It's not for me. How did you bring that into your companies now?
You know, I always look at this winning mentality of you have to have more ownership and accountability with yourself than anybody else around you. You can't have people in your organization that ask more out of you than you ask for more, that you ask for more in yourself, right? And so if you lead, and I call this day one, if you lead every single day as it's just one day, I just have to focus on this one day, and be my best self today. And then you go to the next day, you wake up tomorrow, and then you just be your best self today. That leads to huge jumps in any organization. Obviously, we can talk about teamwork and things of that nature, but just the mindset of an athlete and understanding how to win, which comes down to ultimately you being accountable and you having the highest standard for yourself. And once you have that, right, and if anybody's like, well, how do I create a standard? Well, if you want to create a standard, or if you want to change your life, you just have to raise your standard. So if your standard right now is I'm a B+ student, or I'm a 6, I make 100,000 a year, well, that is your standard, because if it wasn't your standard, your life wouldn't look that way. So if you have a standard of making $500,000 a year, that is your standard, and you start believing and creating these belief systems that now reshape your reality to where you live that. But it all starts with the mindset of understanding where it is that I want to be, and then visualizing how it is that I want to get there.
Absolutely, 100%. One of the things that you do too is you coach people to get there, right? And companies, how to make that transition, how to change that mindset. When I work with a lot of people, I hear all the time, if I could just make this much, if I can make enough to pay for that. And I'm like, that's telling your mind that you can't make more than that. So why are you limiting yourself to just barely surviving? And I see a lot of companies doing that, a lot of heads of companies. I'll be listening to them like, ooh, mindset, that's a mind block. Like, you got to expand past that.
Yes. So one of my my mentors and business partners, he told me this a while back, and he said, most people operate in worry, doubt, and fear. That is what the world operates on. That is what the news puts out. Everybody during COVID right now is operating in fear, loss of jobs, loss of incomes, what's going to be next. And he said, if you operate in love, abundance, and prosperity, you will always be okay. And I live through that every single day. I always deal with anything in my life with love, abundance, and prosperity. Doesn't matter if someone's upset. Right now, everybody's upset about this whole Minneapolis situation with, the police officer who killed the guy, the homeless man, and it's an unfortunate thing, right? We shouldn't have to be dealing with this in 2020, but we all have the ability to react the way that we choose to react. And so we have to look at the long-term outcomes of what it is that we want in our life, and do we want to show up as this kind of person? Because right now, I can tell you that a lot of people are watching the news and they're just shaking their heads, because this isn't what humanity is about, right? We understand that negative things happen, bad things happen. We'll deal with that. But what we can't accept is for people looting and, rioting and things like that. I think that there's a way to do something, and there's a constructive way to create change. And I don't think that combating negativity with more negativity is the way to go.
100%. I totally agree with you. And I think that is a great philosophy for everyone to have, because it makes that ripple effect that goes out in the world and creates the change that you really want to see.
Exactly. And it's just about stacking one domino and putting one foot in front of the next, right? But it's when society as a whole starts to feed into this whole negative environment. And if you want to change your life, this is the biggest, and it's almost like I don't even think about it. And certain people talk to me, they're like, you're so positive. I'm like, well, I don't know how to be negative. Mm-hmm. It's like I have this box around me, and anything that's negative just hits it and bounces off, because I just don't know how to be negative, because I've been thinking from a positive psychology perspective for so long that it's just innate. I cannot fathom, why you're saying I can't do this, because there's scientific research that says if you do this long enough, if you have the right resources, if you have the right mentors, you can become the best at whatever it is that you want. Now, from an athletic perspective, there's some limits to that because of our, biology, but from a mindset perspective, as you know, you can accomplish whatever it is that you want with the right mentors, the right habits, and the right beliefs.
Yep. I'm a mindset coach. So absolutely. It's what I'm telling people all the time. It's a blueprint for the brain. So putting those labels up in your house, like I was just talking to you earlier, and I was talking about the sign you had up in the back of you, and it made me laugh. It was like so amazing. You want to tell everyone what it said?
Yeah. So it says, if you're not on the Forbes list, get back to work.
100%. And I'll tell you what, the only reason it's referring to those who are not on it, because those who are already know that. They're
Exactly.
already back to work.
Yep, and they're constantly working. They always have the end goal in mind. And you know, I was actually talking to a client the other day, and they were saying, how do I stay motivated during this time? And you know, there's a lot that you can do. The number one thing is just keeping your routines and keeping your habits. Just by doing that, you will sustain, you know, anywhere from 10 to 15% motivation through this time. Now, if you actually start planning goals, it'll increase that by about 20%. So no matter where you are in this situation, if you have a 30-day goal, a 60-day goal, and a 120-day goal, it automatically increases motivation. And so we're visual people, right? We're you know, a species that needs to see things, right? That's why we all watch movies. That's why we all love movies. That's why we all have a favorite movie. But if you can see where you're going, things start to become clear. And that's the biggest detriment that holds any business back, any entrepreneur back, any person in general, is clarity.
When I was growing up, I don't know if your parents did this because they sound like very positive people, but my family would always say, don't say that, you get the words of your mouth. So I was always really aware of what came out of my mouth. So it was always positive, or what was going to happen, never the things that couldn't be possible. But they never taught me the one important thing, as the little talking person in your head that'll say, that's not going to happen. And those things would run across my brain all the time, even though verbally I was saying all that good stuff, my mind had not made that. And when I saw this incredible transformation of stopping that in your mind and saying, no, that's not happening. So it's really important that you've got that visually out there. You're verbally saying it, but you're also stopping your brain if it ever starts to give you that back talk and say, I'm sure when you were getting that breath of fresh air outside your home, after you got the news that you hadn't been drafted, that was going on in your head, right? But you stopped it.
Yeah, you always have this thing that pops up in your head to where you want to lean into the possibilities that it can't happen. And you have the decision to choose otherwise. And so with me, I know that things are possible, because if anybody's ever done it before, it's possible. And if it hasn't been done before, I enjoy that even more, because now it's an opportunity for me to do what's never been done. I think for being in 2020, I think the hard part is finding things that people haven't done already, because a lot has been done in these last, you know, however many years of civilization.
Yeah, absolutely. There hasn't been much. It seems like it's every time someone comes up with something new, it's such a shock, because even movie makers, they're making the same movie over and reframing it, like
Right.
making it into a cartoon or a series.
Exactly.
And when something new actually comes out, you're like, something new.
And that's why we love it. And we, you know, for the most part, we all fall in love with it. That's, you know, when you listen to music and you hear someone that doesn't sound like anybody else, you're like, oh my God, who is this? So it's a breath of fresh air. And so I truly believe novelty is, you know, the thing that, you know, really creates the new world, I guess, is where I'm going with this. And I'm so excited for, you know, what's to come, you know, artificial intelligence and, you know, virtual reality and machine learning and quantum computing and all of these things that are going to change where we're at, you know, autonomous vehicles, you know, and there's a lot of people who are afraid. And, you know, the people who are afraid, like I said, most people operate in worry, doubt, and fear. And those are the people who are always on the outskirts, who are always, you know, trying to figure out how to just make it. And, you know, it's another conversation I have with my client, and she's creating a company called Thrivalist, and it's a retreat where she teaches women how to survive if anything happens, but really how to break through challenges. And I was telling her, life is not about surviving. It's not about going paycheck to paycheck. It's not about just getting by. It's about thriving to where you can make an impact in the world and be able to change somebody else's life. That's the true pleasure in living, right? If you're born, you live your whole life, and then you die, and you haven't changed anybody's life, why are you here?
You should be changing others' lives, right? In such a positive, good way.
It's what we were put here for. And if you haven't figured that out, there's ways to do it, but you know, that's kind of the cheat code. We're here for a reason.
Yeah. Well, you are a breath of fresh air and so inspiring. I absolutely love your story, and I'm so grateful that you shared it with everyone here. And how can people connect with you?
Thank you, Jana. I appreciate, again, the platform, and they can find me on my Instagram. I'm pretty active there. It's Bret _Lockett, Lockett. And if you're not an Instagrammer, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm there. I'm pretty active there as well. And if you want to find more information on what it is that I do and how I do it, you can go visit my website at www.bretlockett.com.
Well, thank you so much, Brett. I stalker him a little bit because he's so positive and I think he's inspiring. So I wish you guys would all go stalker him a little bit.
And likewise, like I said, your podcast is amazing. I love what you're doing with the magazine, and you're just an amazing human being. So thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We are done.